best interview preparation. So if you're wanting to know, and you're wondering, how should I prepare for a job interview? What should I do without forgetting anything important? Okay. This is what I would say. Okay. Once again, 7 is the magic number of the day. There are 7 things I recommend you do. Okay. In terms of preparing yourself. The first one is pretty simple. It's your appearance. Okay. We all know this. So make sure that your attire, right? Your attire, your clothing, right, is appropriate. You look the part. Okay. Your grooming, same thing, right? You got that handlebar mustache going, especially if you're female. Like make sure it's appropriate for the role you're taking. You know, you might work in a place where you got lots of female workers that have handlebar mustaches, in which case that would be totally appropriate. But if it's not, make sure that you show up and you look like you belong there, right? Okay. How you talk, right? If you work in a garage, you might talk a certain way. If you work at a bank, you might talk a different way, slightly different. Make sure that you don't get those two mixed. Don't show up at your bank job talking like you're about to change a tranny on a 59 coupe. And don't go down to the garage and talk to them about, the benefits of a amortized mortgage, right? That's based off LIBOR. How you act, what's appropriate. Okay, if you're young and you're getting your first job and you don't know how to behave in an interview, watch a few videos about it or go and learn that stuff. And okay, I wrote down act and I wrote down behave. I think those are the two same things. Now, how do you do this? Well, research the company. Okay, that's one thing you can definitely do. If you don't know how people dress there, the obvious thing is to go do a Google search, right? And look at how people dress, right? Let's look at how people have their facial hair, if that's a concern for you, right? You don't want to get rejected for a job because of how you dressed or your facial hair. I mean, that's stupid, right? Even if it's hateful to you to like dress that way, just do it for this one stupid interview, and then you get the job, and then then you can maybe possibly push the envelope, when you get the job. They get to know you, they see that you're awesome, and then, maybe you start to mess with their dress code, right? That's how subversion starts. Okay, so number 1 is your appearances. Make sure you prepared that stuff. Okay, don't show up to your job interview in a sweatpants if you're getting interviewed at the bank. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, like I said, research the company. Okay, not just how they speak or dress or act. Okay. But the details of the company. What does the company sell for a start? What business are they in? That would be good to know, right? Don't show up and not know what this employer does. So basic stuff like that, right? Okay. Maybe you're a mechanic and you're getting a job at this company that posted a job as a mechanic. But maybe that's not their main line, right? Maybe it's to maintain a fleet of vehicles for an army of salespeople that goes out and sells life insurance, right? All at that company. The company is mainly an insurance company, but they have their own small fleet of vehicles for their own employees. And you're a mechanic that's supposed to service those vehicles. You know what I'm saying? Don't go down there and be surprised when they mention that, something about insurance. You're like, what? What's that got to do with anything? And then make a bad joke putting down insurance people right in front of them, Okay, so make sure you do this basic stuff. This should take literally 2 minutes. Get on Google or ChatGPT or whatever. And if you can't find the company because the company's very small, then look up the industry. Okay? Right? You've worked as a mechanic for many years. I don't know. You're putting in for a job as a manager of a team of mechanics in a garage. How should the manager dress? How should the manager act? Oh, sure, you've seen a couple of managers, maybe, but is that representative of how they do it in a big company when you've only worked in small companies or so on, right? So it might be very useful to see how those people dress and act and talk, right? So find that out online. Okay, so that's number 2, research the company. Number 3 is research the interviewers. If you know who's going to be in the job interview, look them up, right? LinkedIn is an incredible tool for this. So if you know if you've been contacted by a recruiter and they say, we're bringing you in for an interview, it'll be with me and with the hiring manager, someone called John or John Smith. And, they're this is their title, right? And that email went to you and to John Smith, right? So you can see their email, you can see their title. Look them up. You know the company, you know the location, you know their name, you know their title. So you could probably find them on LinkedIn if they have a LinkedIn profile, which a lot of people do, right? And then if you can remember their name and their title and maybe something about their background, like you say, okay, John Smith, I can see by looking at their profile that, they've come up through sales. So they're mainly a salesperson who's now in charge of this entire business unit, right? It's like, okay, so I'm talking to a salesperson. That might be useful to know, right? So you don't engage them in heavy conversation about accounting or operations or something. You know who you're talking to. And then the recruiter, you see the recruiter has only been a recruiter for 1 year. Before that, they were a high school teacher for 25 years, something like that, right? So you have an idea of who you're speaking to, and that can help you to get a rapport with these people, right? Maybe it turns out that your spouse is a high school teacher or something. So you might have something to talk about with the recruiter if you're just making small talk, right? Kind of nice to know these little things, right? Once again, that shouldn't take a lot of time. That should maybe take under 10 minutes to find all this out. Okay, write down a couple of notes on a Post-it note or whatever you do on your phone, and then you're set. You can revise it right before the interview if you have time. Okay, so that's number 3. So we've got appearances, research the company, research the interviewers. Those are 3 things that everyone should do. We're not spending a lot of time on this stuff, just little things. Number 4, familiarize yourself with their lingo, okay? In the job posting, they referred to the requirements, they referred to maybe the job itself, the role, they referred to their business maybe. And pay attention to how they described it, what they do, and how they describe what they do. And as much as possible, when you go to an interview, speak in their terms, right? So for example, let's say you're getting a supervisor job, but they don't call it supervisor. They call it lead hand, or they call it frontline manager, or, like whatever, it's silly because all these terms basically mean practically the same thing. But if you go down there and start talking all about being a frontline manager when they don't know what that is, right? The recruiter doesn't know what that is. The recruiter was asked to find a candidate to be a supervisor. So you go down there and you don't say the word supervisor once during the interview, the fact that you've been a supervisor, that you know how to be a supervisor, and instead you talk to them all about like being a frontline manager, and they secretly, they don't want to go, excuse me, what the hell does that mean? They're not going to do that, right? For a variety of reasons. So they didn't get very much. They didn't hear that you have a lot of supervisory experience. So they falsely come to the conclusion that you're not qualified, right? Which is retarded because you are, right? You like my politically sensitive description of that. So no, that's the reality. You've got to use their lingo, because if you don't, you can run into issues. Okay, familiarize yourself with their lingo, speak in their terms, okay, and speak in terms of the job requirements. So what's really good is to go down, and I'd still recommend this. I know this is 2024, but I would still recommend this. Go down to the job interview with a few pieces of paper, okay? Technology can go wrong. They might not allow phones in the interview, or whatever. So as a fallback option, you should have a couple of things printed out on paper if possible. One would be the job posting. Another would be your resume, right? On the job posting, the original job posting where it describes the job and it describes what they're looking for, highlight the things that they've said they're looking for. Okay, so Bachelor of Science degree, highlighted. Experience using that software, highlighted. I used an example earlier. What was it? Experience with soil analysis. So you're right. So you highlight soil analysis, right? Now, you put this on the table in front of you, okay? It's okay to have papers on the table in front of you. Very few people are going to beat you over the head for having papers in front of you. Now if you stare down at them and read off them the entire time, that's going to be a problem. But if you just put them on the table and then you talk to them by looking them in the eye, right? Now, occasionally you glance down and then you're talking to them. Kind of like I'm looking at notes over here. I try and occasionally glance at them and then I'm back, right? If I was actually rehearsed for what I'm doing now, I'd be doing a better job. But that's the kind of thing you can do. You can just glance down. What have they said they're looking for? Bring up those things. The fact that you have them, bring them up. Don't bring up things they haven't said they're looking for because you guess that they would regard that as a good thing. Bring up the things they've said they're looking for and tell them that you have it and talk to them about that. And what you're doing is you're putting their mind at ease that, oh, you've got that, or that's not going to be a problem, right? Okay. So familiarize yourself with what they've said they're looking for. Put that on the table in front of you, highlighted. You can always refer to it very, very casually, right? Okay. That'll be number 4. Okay. So make sure you got that. Make sure you're familiar with what they've said. Number 5, here we get to the meat and potatoes of this. There's a couple of things you're going to have to rehearse. So number 5 is to rehearse the traditional job interview questions and common behavioral questions. I've gone into great detail on my YouTube channel about how to do these. Okay. There's something like 10 traditional job interview questions. There's the introduction question. Tell me about yourself. Please introduce yourself. It's all the same question. There's the question about your strengths. What are your strengths? There's the question about weaknesses. What are your weaknesses? Okay. Make sure you've got answers right on the tip of your mind, ready to go, that are vetted and that are really good about how to answer those. The future question and the past question. The future question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Right? The past question is, why did you leave your last job? What brings you here? That kind of question, right? They're looking for dirt. They're looking for dirt on all of these. They're trying to get you to give them a reason not to hire you, right? They're looking for red flags. So make sure you have answers for that. You've rehearsed the answers and you've memorized them. And when someone asks you any of these questions, you know what to say. You don't have to think like, ooh, oh man, and then you just make up an answer. No. Have these rehearsed. What else would there be? The salary question. What are your salary expectations? Make sure you've got an answer to that. What is your current salary? That wonderful pointed question. Make sure you're prepared for that. And then at the end they ask, do you have any questions for us? Right? So have questions ready to go, right? Don't go, no, I guess not, right? The answer is not no. You should have questions. So make sure that you've practiced these, you've rehearsed these, and you've memorized your answers. So you're ready to go. Okay. The other part of this, in addition to traditional job interview questions, the cliched job interview questions that I've just explained, is behavioral questions. These are ones where they say, tell me about a time. Tell me about a time that, you did this. Tell me about a time that, you did something extremely creative under a very tight deadline as part of a group with your manager looking on, and there was a lot at stake, and you had to do this in a situation with which you were previously unfamiliar. Tell me about that time, right? These wonderful questions that you can't rehearse for because there's literally a million of them, right? There's a million possible things they could ask you, right? So how do you handle these? Well, you watch my video on how to handle them, right? But make sure you've done your preparation for those. Simple summary is you think of 5 to 10 success stories. You practice telling them in the, what's the format? The STAR format or STAR L format. Look up what that is if you don't know. And you've practiced these, you've rehearsed these, they're on the tip of your mind, ready to go. They've been vetted. You know that they're good answers. They're not going to signal any bad things about you. They're not going to, have you put your foot in your mouth, figuratively or literally, I suppose. And you're all ready to go with behavioral questions. Okay. So make sure you've done that. That's the preparation for job interview questions that you need to do. Okay. To give you some detail on the behavioral questions, I've written down some notes for myself. I've covered this in other videos, but just a quick summary. When they ask you, tell me about a time you've done this, make sure, obviously, it's something that you would do again. Don't tell them a story of something you did that you kind of have since learned that that's not really the best thing to do, right? Just basic things like this. Make sure you're able to say something about conflict with a previous boss, team member, coworker, right? You've got conflict stories that you could say. They're going to ask you, tell me about a time you failed, specifically at a task, at a deadline, with miscommunication, right? Or stress. Okay, so make sure that, you can speak to all of those. Usually one story will be able to speak to multiple things. So just make sure you've prepped the right stories, right? I've talked about all this previously. You just need between 5 and 10 stories that you've thought about beforehand, you've memorized, you've practiced telling them in like a minute in the STAR L format. And make sure that you've also got a couple of success stories in there, like accomplishments, success, with change and success with creativity. You've got examples you can instantly just say, right? Because you've rehearsed these. This is actually a lot simpler than I'm making it sound, because if you prepared, like, say, 5 of your most shining moments, you've practiced saying them in that particular format, so it's nice and compact. You could tell the entire thing in a minute or less, right? Because you don't ramble, you've actually prepared, right? The same story could be used to explain how you're creative, or how you can work under very trying conditions, or how you can get people to collaborate. Like, the same story could be used to answer any of those, right? Because it involves all that stuff. So it's just a matter of having done this work in advance. Okay. So that's my point number 5, is to rehearse the traditional questions, behavioral questions. Make sure you're prepared. So this is all solo work. This is all work you do by yourself. Okay. Recommendation number 6 that I have is to rehearse these with a friend or another party, like do a mock interview. So it's great that you've figured out what you're going to say, right? And you've maybe practiced in front of a mirror or something. If you want to really do a great job, do mock interviews. Grab a friend or family member, that you find loafing around your place. If they're not doing anything worthwhile with their lives, tell them, hey, come here, can I get you to help me with this? You pretend to be an interviewer, and let's do a fake job interview, and you ask me some questions, and this will be practice for me, right? And then afterwards, optionally, you can give me some feedback and tell me how you think I did, or what you think I should work on, right? You don't have to do that part if you don't want to, but it helps. And if it feels awkward doing this with a friend or family member, that's good, because that's training for how it's going to feel in a job interview with the real people there, right? It's going to feel a little bit weird and awkward. You're out of your comfort zone. You're on someone else's turf. So you might be a little bit nervous, to a degree, but you still have to remember your lines, basically, your stories and your answers. So that's good. So number 6 is to do mock interviews. You've done the preparation work by yourself. Now go practice, preferably with a friend. Practice with yourself so you remember that, and then when you think you're ready, go do it with somebody else. Executives pay a lot of money to private HR companies to do mock interviews. Not only do they help you to practice, but they also give you supposedly professional feedback, right? And they say, this is how you're coming across. We would recommend that you tone this down, or you talk more about this. Instead of doing this, don't, do less of that and more of this, right? So they'll give you that kind of feedback. It costs a lot of money. You're paying recruiters and stuff for helping you work on this. But everyone can benefit from this. Friends and family members, they may not be recruiters, but they can tell if somebody's coming across like a jackass or like an arrogant prick, and maybe unintentionally, right? They can tell basic stuff like this. So that's a real help sometimes. And finally, to wrap this up, number 7, and this is very important, is to practice etiquette, protocol, right? All that kind of stuff. Trying to be, work on your likability, your charisma. Practice. This sounds silly, but practice your smile. A lot of people go to job interviews and they're so uncomfortable, and God damn it, they look it. Just sitting there and like, kind of, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? You don't make a great impression. I don't know how true this is. This is my opinion. But I believe that unless you've really practiced this or prepared for this, your facial expression generally shows what you're feeling. So if you're feeling really nervous, to a degree, you will look nervous unless you are actively trying to put on some kind of game face and, not keeping it real. If you feel confident, you will naturally look confident to a degree, right? So if you go to a job interview, chances are people are going to be nervous to varying degrees. People are going to be uncomfortable to varying degrees. You're going to be not enjoying it. So if you showed that in your body language, I'm uncomfortable, I'm nervous, and I hate it here. Do you think that's going to make a good first impression? No, it won't. You want to walk in there and go, hey, let's talk about this. It's great to meet you, and it's great to meet you, and I'm really happy I'm here. And let's talk about what I can do for you, and how this is going to be a tremendous thing for both of us, right? That's what you want to convey through your body language, your facial expression, all that. So work on that stuff. I mean, it takes practice. You learn this by practicing. Learn the theory, and then go out and try and apply it. Apply it when you're talking to family members. Apply it when you're talking to friends. Apply it when you go down to the grocery store or whatever, and you're talking to the clerk. You're on close, intimate terms with the person bagging your groceries. And just practice instead of being, possibly your normal uncomfortable self, right? Where you just want to, like not make eye contact and walk out of there. You know what I mean? And the more practice you do, the better you will get. I don't care who you are. You will be a whiz at this if you put in a little bit of practice time to try and actually apply these principles, okay? See if you can even work in a sense of humor. Or practice ice breaking or making small talk. Hey, what's up? How's it going? And try and get a conversation going with somebody, in a way that doesn't feel completely awkward and strange and off-putting, but like more natural, So learn that stuff. If you put in the time to do this stuff, your results in job interviews and things will go up exponentially. Okay, the better you get at this kind of stuff. So if you're an introvert, you're a technically minded person, you're not really a people person, if you can tack on some of these very basic things, you will really do a lot better when it comes to interviews and making a good impression with people. It'll just open up a lot of opportunities for you. So there you go. And there we go. That's the end of my long, rambling recommendation of 7 points of how to prepare for a job interview. So hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully I didn't put everyone to sleep. There's 34 people here Thank you for being here. Hopefully you're getting something about this.